I've always loved The Last of Us. Ask anyone that I know in real life and they are really sick of me talking about it. But strap in, because that's what I'm here to do. The new HBO adaptation show really cements itself as one of the finest adaptations in its use of repurposing. In the game, side characters need to provide levity, a change in dynamic, and usually they're just kind of someone to present a side quest. And I'm not saying that these characters don't serve the overall story, of course they do, but where we're typically stuck with Joel and Ellie's forced perspective, we lose the opportunity to know them through any other lens beyond what can they do for us. In the TV show, that's just not the case anymore. The shift in medium is allowing us to explore them through different lenses. One of the best episodes of the show features Bill and Frank learning to find a life worth living beyond the apocalypse. This episode was met with backlash, to no one's surprise, under the guise that it wasn't accurate to the game, which in fairness, it's not.
What, you know this guy or something?
Frank.
Who the hell's Frank?
It's so much better. Bill survives in the game, sure, but at what cost? He loses Frank because he refuses to change. His life is intact, but he's alone, bitter and miserable. In the show, however, Bill dies in his husband's arms, an old man satisfied with the fulfilling life he lived because he embraced change. The primary focus of the episode is to show us what true and honest love looks like, and then later on in the show we can use what we've learnt to confront what's being shown to us. Frank loves outwardly and expressively, and Bill loves internally and protectively. I wonder who they could possibly be a parallel for. Joel and Ellie's love is obviously not romantic, but it's absolutely based on dependency from both sides. Ellie needs Joel's help to cross the country, and Joel, even if he doesn't realize it, needs Ellie's help to reopen himself to the possibility of human connection again. When we first meet Bill and Frank, they're shadows of who they end up becoming. Trust doesn't come easy to Bill, so he pushes away what he fears might come close, and Frank, a man who values beauty, finds himself in a hole covered in shit. Over the episode, we watch as their relationship progresses over the course of like 15 to 20 years or something, and we see Bill's first piano session with Frank.
But there's no one at my side.
But contrary to the song, he has found someone to stand by his side now, and his unwillingness to trust morphs into a fierce love that compels him to protect. This is exactly what happens with Joel, but with the added context of what the world's already taken from him, Joel's opening up comes with limits. Where Frank encourages Bill to find beauty in other things, strawberries, pride in their home, pride in their social life, Joel is too broken to redefine what beauty can mean to him. He absolutely acknowledges his second chance, but he views his shortcomings as the reason Sarah died, and therefore refuses to let his love weaken him again in case the world ever tries to strip him of his daughter for a second time. He refuses to be vulnerable to a point where it actually restricts him from truly valuing Ellie's decisions and choices over his own. When Frank succumbs to his illness and opts to decide his own fate, Bill is devastated, but he understands the decision. With the world in the state that it's in, the ability to go out on your own terms is a luxury that's rarely afforded to anyone. And rather than being angry, bitter, or fearful, Bill respects Frank's choice, even deciding to join him in death. When we see Joel confronted with the ugly truth, the truth that Ellie likely would have just chosen to give up her life in order to save others, Joel answers in the only way he knows how to declare his love, through protective violence. The show is telling us that despite knowing it's not what she'd want, Joel's trauma response renders him unable to give up any more for this world. Sarah was taken from him, killed by a soldier who was supposedly there to help, which severed Joel's ties with humanity, this world, and all those who claim to be in service of a better tomorrow.
If you're feeling lost,
Tell me to look for the light and I'll break your jaw.
He's too wounded to look past what he believes to be definitive truth. He's completely unwilling to find a new perspective, and this will always stand in the way of Joel's ability to love honestly and without condition. In the final episode, Joel and Ellie come as close to saying they love each other as they're both really capable of.
The reason I'm telling you all this
I
is...
know why you're telling me all this.
Yeah, I reckon you do.
Joel reveals that the wound in his head was actually stitched up in a place that was just like this. The guy that shot and missed was actually him. Interestingly enough, the story that Joel tells actually reflects Henry's journey from earlier on in the season. He wasn't scared, he just simply didn't see a point in being alive anymore.
Simple as that.
A few episodes prior to this, we get to see Henry go through almost the exact same set of circumstances. Sam was entirely dependent on Henry, which was likely the catalyst for the pressure and responsibility he carried with him, so when it all goes wrong, the burden weighs too heavy to bear for Henry, and he does end up taking his own life in the exact same way that Joel tried to years ago. And I think this makes for a really interesting comment on Joel's worldview. When Joel buries Henry and Sam, it feels as though he's burying a part of himself that ever considered taking this way out. Joel does perceive Henry's choice as him giving up or being too overcome and finding things too much to bear. And when he recognizes that he once felt the same, I think he accepts at that moment that he's no longer going to succumb to what the world has in store for him. He commits himself to carving carving his own path from here on out, regardless of consequence. The choices that led to Henry and Sam's eventual death all started with a simple trade. In choosing to save Sam, giving up information on a good man that would lead to him being killed, Henry made a choice, choosing one life over another because despite what's deemed ethical and fair, he prioritized his family and ensured their survival. It's kind of what I believe endears him to Joel.
I am the bad guy because I did a bad guy thing. But you get it though. You might not be her father, but you were someone's.
And when Joel is looking over their graves, considering where that path ended up leading for them, I think it only further cements the core ideals in his mind. When Joel reunites with Tommy, I think the series is communicating something quite clearly. That being that Tommy's primary narrative purpose is to show us an alternative. Tommy has always been indicative of a better way of life for his brother, but it's a life that Joel had before the outbreak, and he refuses to believe that that's ever going to be possible for him again. Instilled with this kind of metaphorical warning from his time spent with Henry and Sam, Joel's walls begin to break down, and he pleads with Tommy to carry on the rest of the journey for him. Terrified of getting too close and kind of having to relive his trauma all again, he attempts to repress what he feels, which it's never gonna work for this guy. It all comes bubbling out of him when he finds out that the life he simultaneously dreads and craves is possible.
Got that working a couple years ago. After that, sewage, plumbing, water heaters, lights.
This place actually fucking works.
Look around him. Jackson's a community that is thriving and redefining what it means to survive. So for the first time in a long time, Joel is faced with a life actually worth living, and the thought of opening himself up to actually living it fucking terrifies him.
Just because life stopped for you doesn't mean it has to stop for me.
Tommy is a survivor whose optimism has allowed him to progress beyond what his life amounted to 20 years ago. He let love in and didn't shy away from it, which enables him to represent the future that Joel and Ellie could have together. And Tommy and Maria welcoming a child into this community is an obvious far cry from Joel's insistence to be rid of the child that he has in his own care. When it comes to leaving, Joel hesitates, just as he did with the gun after Sarah died. He tells Ellie that whilst it's likely still way safer to go with Tommy, she still deserves a choice all the same.
I still think you'd be better off with Tommy.
Let's go.
Okay.
He doesn't say it, but this is Joel opening himself up to trying again. It's an invitation. He refuses to take her initially because of his fear of caring again, but he also admits to not being the best choice anymore.
You want me to take her?
I'm just gonna get her killed, I know it. I know it. I have to leave her.
His connection to her has developed into a weakness which could be exploited and get both of them killed. That's how much he cares. Even his refusal to take her takes shape in this deeply rooted desire to ensure her safety, which when he acknowledges it, he attempts to overcome. His harsh words in that child's bedroom cut just as deep to her, and he realizes that he's not projecting a feeling onto their relationship. She cares for him just as much as he cares for her. It's a fatherly consideration that he realizes he's overstepped the mark. He commits himself despite what he considers to be his better judgment because she'd just be more scared with someone else, and he would rather take the burden of fear than force it onto her. When Joel makes the decision he makes at the end of the series, it hits hard because of the impact that Marlene and David specifically have had. As an audience, we can sympathize with the monstrous acts that he commits because of the little moments that we've been privy to along the way. David declaring that he was shown a higher truth not by God but by the infected is synonymous with Joel's actions.
What does cordyceps do? Is it evil? No. It feeds and protects its children, and it secures its future with violence if it must. It loves.
David's philosophy here is so horrifying because we really don't want to see any views shared between this guy and this guy.
Nonce.
The trouble is that, unfortunately, the parallel is kind of undeniable. Something to consider with Joel's betrayal is that it forces Ellie's hand when it comes to their later strained relationship. We know from Ellie's conversations with Sam that her biggest fear is ending up alone. In the episode Left Behind, we learn why she fears this fate above all else. Not only is the episode centered around Riley providing her one last great experience or whatever before heading across the country and abandoning her, but it also shows us Ellie's discovery of her own immunity. Or, you know, maybe not that directly, but at least the moment she learns that she is to face death. The moment obviously never comes, but because of her survivor's guilt, Ellie feels the weight of every single life lost to the infected on her shoulders. She develops a burning empathy for everyone that she can't save, using their loss as a motivation to fuel her journey towards developing a cure. It becomes her purpose, and she sacrifices pieces of herself along the way to see it through, all whilst growing closer to a man that refuses to give up anything beyond what he's already lost.
After all we've been through, everything I've done, can't be for nothing.
Where Bill taught Joel to find purpose and protect it, he still understood the importance of choice, selflessness, and respectful love. Joel doesn't. Where Henry gives up, Joel doesn't. We see him decide what he's gonna do in that stairway, but he drowns out the noise of the massacre in his mind. He walks like a man possessed who hasn't stopped to consider the suffering he's bestowing upon others by taking what he thinks he's owed from them. God, I fucking love this story. I have a podcast as well, by the way, which you can't hear me talk about The Last of Us on because, like an idiot, I lost the audio and we were never able to release that episode. But we do talk about other things, so come along and listen to some other stuff if you want. We've talked about quite a lot of things. I'm sure there's something that you can find enjoyable there. Hit the like button, subscribe, do all of the YouTube stuff. Bye.